Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and we are back with our next panel discussion on towards the future of payment, frictionless and contactless. Let me first introduce you to our moderator, Mr. Mihir Gandhi, our partner leader, Payments Transformation PwC India. For the panelist, we have Ms. Noopur Chaturvedi, Country Head Small and Medium Businesses PayU India. Mr. Arvind Ronta, he's the Vice President Heads of Products Visa. Mr. Pranay Jhaveri, Country Manager Euronet. I would request all the delegates to keep posting their questions in the chat box, and the panel will address selected question at the end of the session. Over to you, Mr. Gandhi.
Thanks. Good morning, everyone. And it's been a pleasure to be here as part of this discussion and discuss the future of payments, focusing more on frictionless and contactless. With me, I have a set of esteemed panelists who have been in this space and have got a good industry knowledge of what's happening. So what we have done is we have prepared 3 or 4 themes, but before that, I'll just give a context to what this topic actually means. So when we say future of payments, frictionless and contactless, in the last few months, the pandemic has forced us to move to different types of, purchases and transactions. The way we transact, the way we pay has changed. From having physical point of sale purchases to making it more touchless at physical locations, and also shifting a lot to the online modes because we do not want to go out and risk getting the virus. So I think all these factors have led to a lot of the customers moving their consumer habits and behavior. There has also been a second trend where a lot of new customer segments, which traditionally did not use digital payments, have now started adopting that, and they have been forced to do that primarily because of the pandemic. So, last few months have been very interesting for the industry. There had already been a push by some of the industry players and the regulators to move customers to frictionless and contactless. And let's see how this will evolve and play out going forward. So the first theme or question that I actually have is on how has the customer behavior actually changed in the last few months? While we have some information, but I would like to hear from maybe Arvind, if you can jump in and give your views in terms of how that has changed, and what do you see going forward? Do you think that the customer behavior is going to change and here to stay, or will it revert back to the old behavior as we saw in the demon time? So, Arvind, over to you if you can give your perspective.
Thank you, Mihir. So I think a couple of things on customer behavior. There are several layers to it. Even before COVID hit us, a lot of the customers were already taking on e-commerce. We were seeing a spike in e-commerce even before that. I think COVID has accelerated that trend. And what we are seeing is that if you look at folks who have never used e-com as a channel for paying bills, or recharging phones, those folks have come online first time as consumers. I think that there's a whole new cohort of customers who've got online because they were forced to come online. So whether it's buying groceries or recharging phones or utilities. Now, some of that was because the face-to-face was under lockdown. So you couldn't have bought groceries unless you could buy it online for most people. So that might recede a little bit. But if you look at folks who've adapted to paying bills online, I see my parents, I mean, like they're not even in a millennial generation, but they have taken on paying bills online. I think that's okay with that. They like the convenience. So that's one aspect of customer experience, what might stay on. The other side of the experience is the contactless payment. Now, that's a big part of the digitization where people get comfortable using their cards or mobile form factors in face-to-face. As I think that's a good thing because that eliminates cash usage. And I think the government, the regulator has pushed for use of contactless, which is a very positive sign. I think the challenge has been that face-to-face was under lockdown for quite a amount of time. And so the categories we saw contactless was in fuel and food and groceries first. And now it's coming back to other categories. Like we are seeing restaurants. As the restaurants are getting up, we are seeing contactless transactions coming back. Uh, so from a trend perspective, what would stay? I believe e-commerce is here to stay, and we have some new users in e-com will continue to stay on and use e-com as a very viable channel for commerce. We also believe that contactless, um, and specifically for low value transactions for less than 2,000 rupees, where there is no friction with contactless cards, and that's here to stay as well. In these two tailwinds, I think we should see a lot more spike on digital commerce as we look forward. And the good news is a lot of the e-commerce, specifically non-travel. So there's that nuance also. Travel has gotten hit, both domestic and cross-border. But if you look at e-com, non-travel and card present non-travel, that they have been good shimmering lights for us, where we're seeing recovery back up, coming up pretty strong. Of course, travel continues to be a struggle, but as more and more people are adapting to using e-com or digital channels for non-travel transactions, I think that's a positive sign.
Thanks, Arvind, for sharing your views. I mean, quite interesting. These three segments of population will continue using, and hopefully they will, pick up the pace of digital transactions going forward. Moving to you, Pranay, if you can also share your views on the similar question or trend that we have been seeing, and what do you feel is, the behavioral change, and will it continue to stay? Pranay, you there?
Yes, I'm there, Mihir. Sorry, I was muted. I've just put my video off because it's
Sure, no
getting
problem.
choppy. Yeah, so the last few months, 6 to 9 months, the pandemic has definitely given a new fillip in terms of adoption and growth of digital payments, including frictionless payments. And we've seen a huge spike, as Arvind said, a lot of people have moved to paying their bills online, etc. The consumer behavior has changed, with increased spends, as we all know, on groceries, household supplies, entertainment at home, remote learning, and reduced spends on, travel, hospitality, all the discretionary spends. Now, there has been a shift also to using super apps and online platforms for purchases. Now, with the lockdown restrictions, which are gradually being eased, and as the economy opens up, we are obviously settling down with the new normal. Where we see this accelerated adoption of digital and contactless payments. Now, even on the ATM side, we see increase in adoption of cardless cash withdrawals. Now, it is difficult right now to predict the degree to which the consumer behavior may change permanently as we adapt to the new normal. But according to me, one thing is pretty certain, that we will see more and more people shifting to digital payments, frictionless payments, and adopting new use cases which are relevant to them. I also feel that over a period of time, payments would become less and less visible and graduate to becoming invisible. Now, I mean, let's say the most simplest example of invisible payments is standing instructions. So I myself have, put up standing instructions for all my bill payments. So to make it frictionless, obviously, invisible payments would definitely pick up over a period of time. Obviously, technology would also be a big enabler. But to answer your question, Mihir, right now, as I said, it is difficult to predict, how much of this consumer behavior may change permanently. But definitely, I'm quite certain that we would see a lot more people shifting and adopting digital payments.
Sure. Thanks, Pranay. I think it's a good insight, and you also spoke about the invisible payments, which has already started in some sense, and also
Right.
picked up in other parts of the world. So maybe we can jump onto that also at a point of time. Thanks, Pranay. Thanks for your views. Noopur, would you like to share your views on this topic and what you have been seeing from your perspective? Noopur, you're on mute.
Thanks, Mihir. I think what Arvind and Pranay talked about is very similar to what we've seen on our portfolio ourselves. We saw a huge spike in new users coming to merchants that we service at the time of lockdown. And those users have continued to transact even post the lockdown easing out. However, what we did see was that the discretionary spend did not see that much of growth as did the non-discretionary spend. In fact, interestingly, the category which saw the highest growth during pandemic was the baby goods segment. Very intuitively so, followed by household goods, medicines, etc. And similar to what all of us have experienced, the number of apps that were downloaded for not just buying a stuff which was non-discretionary or paying bills. The other industry which has really benefited from the pandemic is the entire entertainment industry, whether we talk about OTTs or we talk about gaming. So these two categories also have registered a lot of growth, and some of this behavior, especially around bill payment, the behavior around education, as an example, or consumption of OTT. I think that would stay even post the lockdown easing. Work from home has changed forever, and people will be more prone to working remotely as we move forward. But a lot of others, like Pranay is rightly mentioning, may come back to normal, and it's too early to be able to predict the impact on other categories. Now, one side of it was the entire consumer movement of going into digital payments, new categories, etc. And the other, which we see massively happening, was the brick and mortar stores trying to go digital in a hurry. And a lot of both digital identity and digital payments came together for the omni-channel solutions, be it the delivery agents who were now, instead of taking cash on delivery, were relying more and more on link-based payments or POS at delivery. And on the other side, we saw retailers trying to set up their own websites, trying to send the links of these websites to their hyper local markets to be able to continue supplying because they had stocks, but the shops were closed. So that was another parallel interesting behavior that we witnessed, and we really saw our numbers double during these times with these smaller and medium businesses wanting to go online in a hurry. So these were my added on points to what Arvind and Pranay already covered.
Sure, thanks, Noopur. I think you're absolutely right on the small and medium businesses where a lot of these restaurants, small shops, which hadn't even dreamt of taking a card-based payment, and they only used to accept cash. They were forced to move online, and I have few examples in my locality also where now everything you want to order something, they have an app, and they created it both for the Google Play Store as well as for the Apple store, and you can actually purchase everything online and just go to pick it up or they will deliver it to you. So yeah, you're absolutely right in that sense that a lot of businesses have moved online, and it's interesting to see how they are adapting to this change. So thank you for your views. The next trend that I wanted to actually talk about was more, related to the balance between the convenience from a customer perspective and the security and, the potential frauds that we could see in this space because of easing of some of these restrictions. So if you see traditionally some of the developed countries in the Western markets, the emphasis has been a lot on the customer convenience and ease of transacting, whereas India traditionally has been very focused on security and protecting the customer funds. Rightly so, with a few of the other countries also doing the same. So Nupur, just coming back to you and just sharing, if you can share your perspective on are we in the right spot or zone in terms of the balance? Do you think there are any global learnings that we could potentially learn from your experience of having seen PayU across the world? So maybe if you can just share your views on that, that'll be great.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mihir. I think the other countries have a lot to learn from us. And that's my starting point. For us, the regulators have been at the helm of ensuring the consumer protection. And that really helps with a population like us, a 1.3 billion population at various stages of digital adoption, at various stages of financial inclusion needs to be protected. And we are one of the few countries that continue to, lay emphasis on two-factor authentication, at least for the higher ticket sizes, while we are easing it out for lower ticket sizes. And I think that has really played a very good role in preventing fraud, in customer protection, and that is just the right step to take. And easing it out for certain use cases, for certain tokenized transactions is just the right thing to do. At the same time, I think all the stakeholders in the ecosystem have a role to play, or be it in terms of simply creating awareness for consumers around what kind of frauds are likely when you start using digital payments, to a lot of payment aggregators like us actually monitoring transactions, ensuring that both on the onboarding side of merchants as well as consumer transaction side, we are able to use AI and ML to monitor transactions, ensure that the frauds are minimized. Everyone has a role to play. And NPCI and RBI are taking all the steps in the right transaction, in the right way to ensure we all come together and the consumer interests are protected. Much required. It hasn't hampered innovation. As you can see that India continues to be the hotspot of fintech, and we ourselves have launched a number of innovative solutions. So that hasn't taken away from anything in terms of fintech or in terms of innovation, and we continue to adopt digital payments, specifically if you look at UPI numbers. So all the right things getting done, and I think the world has a lot to learn from us.
Great, thanks, Noopur. Thanks for your view. So you are saying that we are in the right zone, in the right spot. We are having the right balance of convenience versus the security. And a lot of countries need to learn from it. So that's great. Arvind, I also wanted to ask you the same question. And given that you have a global canvas and you have seeing a lot of things internationally, what are your views on the same topic?
I think a couple of things. One, I feel like we're at a cusp of taking advantage of technologies that exist worldwide in our country without having to compromise for security, because Noopur is right, like that's sacrosanct, not just for the regulator, but even for all of us who operates in payments, because if the trust is broken, then I think all bets are off. So I think from a product design perspective, security is at the center of every discussion. But they not always have to be either or. Like this notion of that, hey, greater convenience can compromise security and vice versa. That doesn't have to be the case. Markets after markets, we've seen where technologies like risk-based authentication, that's been around for now 3 or 4 years in developed markets, where we can authenticate you and step up that authentication basis intelligence of which device you're using, where you're using from. A lot of that can be done in a way which is anonymized, but still is done in a very risk-based way. And you have sophisticated models that are operating in the background to authenticate you. I mean, these technologies have been out there, well proven, tested, globally accepted. I think some of those, I know that the regulator is actively looking at in our market how some of these technologies could be deployed. So that reduces a lot of friction without compromising security. Other one I would call out is tokenization. What Google Pay did, what Samsung has done in India. I think it's a great example of where you are delivering high consumer value of convenience, trust, lower friction, and multiple use cases like tokenization for Google Pay, for example, allows them to use, the consumers can use it in-app, offline, on a scan and pay, on a QR. That breadth of use case is actually very important because the digitization is not going to happen on the back of single use case. We need people to use the platform for many different use cases. So it becomes a second nature to use these platforms and you use payments, digital payments. So I feel like tokenization has been a great step by the regulator of allowing device-based tokenization, and Google Pay has gone live with that, Samsung has gone live with that. I think what we do need is also to take it one step forward. Card on file tokenization. It's an active discussion right now in the industry with the help of the regulator. And reason tokenization is such an important technology is because in markets where it has been deployed at scale, we've seen the approval rates as high, incremental approval rates impact is 4 to 5%. That's huge. I mean, these numbers sound small, but going from 84% approval rate in India to 89 or 90% means more transactions are getting approved. And the banks are more comfortable approving those transactions without compromising the security. And so it's these are small experiences, but if consumers get used to a great experience, a transaction which doesn't time out, a transaction which is secure, and you don't have to worry about it that, hey, now I have to call the bank because my phone was spoofed or like there was some kind of a malware in my system. Like if those things are all proactively caught, and their technologies like the two I just mentioned, then I think it'll just espouse more trust in the ecosystem with consumers and would be beneficial for all of us as we drive for more digitization.
Sure, thanks, Arvind. Arvind, I had a follow-up question. So with all these technologies coming into play, right? You spoke about tokenization, you spoke about card on file and other initiatives that we are trying to get from the developed countries. Do you think ever in India there is a possibility of a zero-click or a near zero-click kind of base payment where I don't need to do anything, I don't need to enter any details, any card number, any OTP, anything, and it's just like a straight-through kind of transaction which goes through just to ease this. So can consumers ever expect that kind of frictionless transaction in India?
So I don't think technology is a hurdle. There are markets actually doing it. We can deploy those technologies here. I think we have to pass the muster that the regulator has set for us. I mean, there's a 2FA which has worked and has been used in India for some time. I think the regulator is looking at so the technologies like risk-based authentication. Example that Noopur was giving that for small value transaction, we can suppress 2FA if these are network authenticated transactions. These are models actually the regulator has been very open to hearing and has actually been very receptive, and rightfully so. So an example I'll give you is today there's a product that Visa has in the market for less than 2,000 rupees. There is no friction. You have your existing card on file actually allows you to enroll into an experience that will enable you to check out with a single click. And think so you can augment this with voice-based commerce and all the technologies that are out there. I think it's like a crawl, walk, and run approach where regulator is asking us, hey, show me how these technologies are done in India, in the context of India, whether it's tokenization, whether it's some of these examples I'm giving you. But I really hope that we use the power of technology and risk-based algorithms which are available. And we have some smart Indians, and we have a huge workforce in Bangalore. In our case, we're actually designing these products, right? Like we don't have dearth of smartness in India to actually design some compelling products because we're designing for the rest of the world. So why not for India, right? So, but I think it's going to happen. But I think we'll have to work with the regulator and the industry together on that.
Sure, thanks, Arvind. Pranay would like to hear your views also on the same topic, on the convenience versus security, and what has been your experience of this?
Sure. So, we have a very proactive regulator, as Noopur said, who wants to ensure security of the citizens' money, the consumers' money. We spoke about, enabling technologies and evolution of technologies such as tokenization, sensors, camera, data analytics, AI. We spoke about tap and go. We spoke about voice payments, maybe face recognition, we spoke about all of this, which is fine. Technology is evolving. I think technology is never the inhibitor. But let me give you personal example. For some reason I went to a bank's branch last week, and don't go to the branch generally, but I had to visit, to give some documents. And I saw this gentleman. He was running helter skelter and very panicky, and he was not getting any support. So I just checked with him what happened. He said, 49,000 rupees have been fraudulently debited from his account and credited to a beneficiary, which he did not want to credit. Right. So I asked him how that happened. So he said he used one of the apps, and obviously he was strict. He would have authorized the transaction. He would have been guided by the fraudster, and he would have authorized the transaction. So he did not get too much of a response from the app. So he came to the bank's branch, which was his source of funds, right, the bank account, and there he was not getting any response. So obviously I guided him and I said, raise a complaint to the police, cyber cell, etc. But the point I'm trying to make is education is extremely important. See, we have all the technologies in the world. Technology, as I said, is, it'll continue to evolve, and we'll have a lot of new use cases. We'll try and minimize the friction. As I said, invisible payments, everything is available. But I think an important perspective that I want to bring in is consistent and continuous education of the users, the consumers. So whether it is the issuer, acquirer, whether we have the networks, everybody has to invest into education of because India is a large country. Everybody's not so smart. People in tier 3, tier 4, tier 5, tier 6 are adopting and would potentially adopt digital payments. See, currently we have about 200 million users who are digitally savvy and are using digital payments. But then if we want more people to come into the digital payments ecosystem, I think building that trust, building that confidence is very important. And such an experience, that gentleman would never get back to the digital payment ecosystem, right? So I think that education and awareness is also extremely important in addition to all that we have right now.
Sure, thanks, Pranay. I think we're getting in some questions, but before that, I just want to touch upon the last theme which I had for all of you. Is we have spoken about what we are trying to do and how customers are trying to adopt to this new change and the new behavior. But I also wanted to understand from the industry, and all of you are leading the industry efforts. What are the innovations that we are seeing, especially on the merchant side, to enable the merchant to be comfortable, accept digital payments, and ensure that he's not again moving to the old route of going back to the card based or the cash based kind of model. So maybe Noopur, as you lead the entire SMB segment for PayU, maybe if you give your perspective or share your views in terms of what you're seeing in the merchant side, the innovation happening, and how can we make it more real for them?
Yeah, so Mihir, I already talked about merchants wanting to create a digital presence because of the situation that we are in right now. Now the question comes in that who does he go to for payments? Because we have to be very clear that the shopping behavior and the shopping experience is very, very different from the payment experience. And these need to be segregated in terms of security, in terms of trust, etc. And which is where all of us come in. We have actually over the last few quarters really built a stack to take care of the long tail, which is not very comfortable, which does not have technology teams to do PG integrations. They do not want to get into the rigor of learning technology to do integration of the payment solutions. So we have come out with a lot of low code, no code kind of solutions, which can be easily integrated with whatever they're doing. So those include a lot of omni-channel solutions like dynamic QR, link-based payments. It includes APS, Aadhaar Pay, and the others for the long tail of merchants, which can be used for all strata of the society and not just limited to a credit card or a debit card user. So that is on one side. On the other side, we are also trying to create a lot of security systems for these merchants so that both the merchant interests and the consumer interests are taken care of. So those include stuff like using AI for transaction monitoring that I talked about earlier. But apart from that, a lot of solutions include non-seamless and seamless kind of payment options, a very simple button that can be integrated on a website without knowing any coding. We in fact also have a solution which is a very simple Excel plugins, which are very commonly used by schools that are going online for the first time, because they can send invoice links on bulk and reconcile it all using an Excel sheet itself, rather than creating a website or creating a fancy app for themselves. So a lot of thinking is going behind very, very simplistic solutions to take care of micro merchants on one side, the small and medium merchants on the other. And we do support all the big e-commerce giants of the country who demand a lot more nuanced payment options, a lot more intelligence behind the solutions that we give. So the entire gamut is available with us today, and which is why we're seeing the kind of growth we are over the last few months. Thanks, Mihir.
Sure, thanks, Noopur. Very interesting to understand what you have been doing behind the scenes and making life easy for the consumer, for the merchant segment to actually come on board on the online payment. So thank you for this. Arvind, from your perspective, just want to see, understand what's happening in the physical, merchant space. While Noopur did speak about the online, getting merchants online, but what are the innovations you are seeing in the physical environment to make it more easy to accept digital payments and all forms of business? Arvind, your view, please.
I do want to underline this point that Noopur made on that all these long tail of merchants who are always in physical domain, they had to go overnight. They had to switch on to online. I think there's a lot to be said. There's a lot to be said of some of the platforms and companies who actually did a very good job in bringing these inventories online of Kirana store owner, your neighborhood Kirana store owner. You can actually look up their inventory online and discover. So the discovery stage was brought online by a lot of the folks who were focusing on how to create an inventory online through a website or whatever. So that's that. The payment, specifically the physical payment, to what you're talking about. So one of the innovations is tap to phone. So that we have really been pushing hard, because essentially one of the challenge what we always heard and we've experienced is the cost of terminal, the cost of device of accepting payment has been, of course, a reason why we have created form factors like QR. Because QR doesn't have that cost, but that was one of the biggest drivers for actually pushing QR in India for the long tail of merchants. But what we have found out is that a lot of small merchants actually have smartphones. Smartphones are less expensive these days, as we all know. And can that be a payment device? Being able to deploy a kernel or an SDK in my phone that allows any customer to tap their phone or tap their contactless card and process the payment like as seamless as you would have had with a $150 terminal that you would have had to buy separately. So that's a big trend we are seeing, a big appetite from smaller merchants, small to mid-market merchants to have tap to phone. Second is in the physical domain, I would say, is value-added services. A lot of merchants would want to solve for billing, GST filing, a lot of the other stuff which is not payments related, but it originates from payments or is somehow linked to payments. So like you can't really set up a billing system without touching your point of sale system, which actually monitors all the transactions. And this is important because value-added services, what's happening is if you look at ecosystems like OCAN or open data, of course, account aggregator model, which is the first use case is, OCAN, which allows you, if you're a micro seller, to tap into these cash flow based loans. So all of that starts with monitoring how much sale you've had and actually having an infrastructure that is able to tap into your point of sale and layer on these value-added services of microloans that you could access from any lender in India once this ecosystem goes live. So I think between tap to phone and value-added services, those are two areas where we see already a lot of momentum and future investments happening.
Any last words from your side, and then we can probably take a question.
No, Mihir, I pretty much echo what Noopur and Arvind said. I think nothing more to add. But yeah, I mean, overall, maybe one point I would add is, the functionalities which UPI 2.0 has brought in, definitely. And apart from card payments, we also see a lot of UPI based or QR code based payments, which the merchants and the consumers are adopting at physical stores. So I think that's one trend that's evolving, and I think pretty much everything would coexist. And it depends on what the merchant is comfortable with and what the consumer is comfortable with.
Sure. Thanks, everyone. So we'll just pick up one of the questions because we have limited time. So one of the questions that we have on board is, what are the ways to ensure that frictionless payments will become acceptable across different segments or strata or societies? Uh, in my view, what this means is that how can we enable different segments, right from a fruits vendor to a kirana store to different online players to accept and enable frictionless payments for all their consumer segments. So we have seen some of the views from you. So maybe Arvind, if you can just pick it up and give your views. You did speak about QR, you did speak about phone tap based kind of payments, but if you can just share, what do you think is
Yeah, no, I think I mean, like it is. It has to be a segment-based approach because there's always some friction before it becomes frictionless. Like so a lot of the card and file tokenization, you have to enroll into an experience. So there is a whole understanding or education you need to have before you start using the experience of frictionless. So I do think awareness and education is needed, and that's not equitable for different stratas or different segments. But I think if you look at India and you look at all the form factors we have, QR is a long tail solution for a lot of solution and as for a lot of merchants and consumers. And as you think of contactless tap to phone taking up, you would see a blurring of the lines between QR and contactless transactions because contactless will have the reach that it doesn't have today in brick and mortar, in small, long tail brick and mortar. Online, I think, same thing. A lot of, I mean, like if you're a small merchant and you're on a large platform, your customers are getting frictionless experience because a lot of these large platforms like PhonePe, Paytm, and Google Pay and Amazon Pay, they've invested so much in experience. So if you're in those marketplaces or platform, by default, you get that. But yeah, for others, it'll be a journey and everything over time.
Sure, thanks. Noopur, any views from your side which may be different than what I've been said?
No, I think I completely agree with what Arvind mentioned. I'm just going to add that it is not an overnight process. It will be a journey. We are, moving the right direction in the journey through India Stack, through encouraging all the innovation that's happening. RBI has come out with a sandbox. There's a number of innovation hubs for payments, etc. So we're taking all the right steps, moving in the right direction. QR standardization was another step in that direction, and I think AEPS and Aadhaar Pay will be really the financial inclusion step of digital payment, where even if you don't have a phone, even if you can't scan a QR, you can still do a digital payment at the last ration shop around you. So I think we have a full stack. Education and awareness and reach are the only three things missing. And with the payment bank licenses, we are trying to cover that journey itself. We are moving in absolutely the right direction as a country, and it will be just a matter of time where we really leapfrog to the payments without plastics kind of an ecosystem. So very, very bullish on that.
Sure. Thanks, Noopur. I think we are on time. So thank you, Arvind. Thanks, Noopur, and thank you, Pranay, for your views. I think it's been a very interesting discussion, and we've got some great insights. We shall look at how this industry was and focusing more on frictionless and touchless. So thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Gandhi. Thank you so much. I would like to thank all our speakers who made this discussion super interesting. Another thanks to our title partner Lyra, powered by partner PhonePe, agenda partner PayPoint, payment partner PayU, gold partner Visa Freshers, and AWS. Please stay tuned for other exciting discussion. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.